The stars were silent, spread across the black sea of space. Ethan sat alone in his old freighter, a ship that had seen better days. The engines hummed weakly, the walls creaked with age, and the only sound was the steady breath of a man who had no home, no family, and no plan except survival. He was a scavenger, drifting from one forgotten corner of the galaxy to another. Most days he searched for scraps, broken satellites, lost cargo pods, or anything that could bring him enough credits for another week of fuel. It was a lonely life, but it kept him alive. And in the far reaches of space, that was more than most could claim. One night, as his scanner swept the emptiness, something unusual appeared, a faint signal. Weak and flickering, almost gone, it pulsed like a heartbeat, slow but steady. Ethan frowned, leaning closer to the screen. Another broken beacon, maybe, he muttered. But something about it felt different. The signal carried a strange rhythm, like it was calling, begging. Against his better judgment, he followed it. His freighter drifted toward the signal, deeper into the shadows between the stars. Minutes passed, then the shape appeared. A small escape pod, scarred with burn marks, spinning slowly in the dark. The glass was cracked, the metal dented, but inside there was movement. Ethan's heart jumped. He pressed his face to the window of the pod. At first he thought it was a child, small and fragile. But when the figure turned, he saw the truth. Her skin shimmered faintly with silver lines, glowing softly under the dim light. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, shining with fear. She pressed her tiny hand against the glass. As if reaching for him, Ethan's breath caught. An alien child, not a machine, not cargo, but alive. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to leave. Finding something like this meant trouble. Every faction in the galaxy had laws about alien life. Whoever owned her would come looking, and if they found her with him, it could mean death. But when her lips moved, whispering words he didn't understand, Ethan's chest tightened. The sound was weak, broken, yet full of pleading. He couldn't walk away. He opened the hatch, pulling her into his ship. The air hissed, the locks sealed, and the girl collapsed into his arms. Trembling, she was light as a feather, her skin warm but strange under his touch. The silver lines on her skin seemed alive, glowing brighter as if sensing safety. Her eyes fluttered open again, and she looked at him with something more than fear. Hope. Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years, responsibility. He placed her gently on the bunk in his quarters, covering her with his old jacket. She curled up, whispering in her language, and for a moment, she looked just like any child trying to feel safe in the dark. Ethan sat beside her, running a hand through his rough hair. "What are you?" he whispered, not expecting an answer. But she turned her head, staring at him, and said a single word in broken English. "Protector." The word struck him deep. He didn't know how she learned it. Didn't know if she even understood what it meant, but hearing it made his decision clear. He could not abandon her, no matter the cost. The ship drifted quietly. The stars watching, Ethan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't know why fate had brought this child into his life. But he knew one thing. This was not a simple rescue. This was the beginning of something dangerous. And somewhere in the far corners of the galaxy, others would already be searching for her. Hunters, soldiers, empires, they would all come. And Ethan, a simple human scavenger, had just made himself their enemy. The girl slept peacefully, unaware of the storm to come. Her tiny hand rested on his arm. As if claiming him, Ethan closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "I guess I'm your protector now." But deep inside, he wondered, what kind of child needed a protector so badly that she was left drifting in the cold of space? And what price would he pay for finding her? The freighter drifted silently through the endless black. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. But his thoughts kept turning to the small figure sleeping in his quarters. The alien girl, no taller than his waist, lay under his worn jacket, breathing softly. Every time he thought about her, a knot twisted in his chest. He had lived years without anyone, and now, in one single moment, he was not alone anymore. He should have felt relief, but instead he felt fear. What had he done? He knew the rules. In this galaxy, ownership was law. Whoever the girl belonged to, an empire, a syndicate, or a council, would not forgive him for keeping her. And yet, when she whispered protector, Ethan's choice was sealed. Hours passed, and then he heard movement. He turned, and there she was, standing at the doorway of the cockpit. Her silver-lined skin shimmered faintly, her large eyes watching him carefully. She tilted her head, curious, then pointed at the stars outside the window. Ethan gave a tired smile, That's the void, he said softly. Not much to see. But it's home. She repeated the word, struggling with her tongue. Void. Her voice was strange, musical, almost like a song. It filled the room with a warmth Ethan had never felt before. He motioned her closer and she climbed into the co-pilot seat, small hands pressing against the cold metal. She seemed fascinated by every button, every light when she touched the console. A spark of energy rippled across the controls. Ethan frowned. The broken scanner, which had been dead for months, flickered to life. The girl pulled her hand away, almost shy, as if she had done something wrong. Ethan leaned closer, staring at her glowing skin. "You're not just anyone, are you?" he whispered. The girl looked at him, then pressed her hand to her chest. "Lyra," she said, her voice soft. Her name. Ethan nodded, repeating it slowly. "Lyra." The girl smiled for the first time, and for a brief moment, the weight of the galaxy seemed lighter. But the peace did not last. An alarm beeped sharply. Ethan's stomach sank. Something was following them. He tapped the console, the old radar now glowing thanks to the girl's touch. A ship was trailing them, faint but steady. He cursed under his breath. Word must have spread faster than he thought. They already knew. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. Sensing his fear, he forced a calm tone. "Don't worry," he said, though the words felt empty. "I'll keep you safe, protector." He reminded himself. That was who he was now. Whether he wanted it or not, to hide, Ethan guided the freighter into a nearby asteroid field. Rocks the size of towers drifted slowly, colliding and spinning in silence. It was dangerous, but it gave them cover. The pursuing ship stayed on their tail, weaving through the debris, patient as a predator. Meanwhile, strange things began happening inside Ethan's ship. The broken lights flickered back to life. The leaking oxygen tank sealed itself with a shimmer of silver. Even Ethan's injured arm, cut by metal days ago, no longer ached. Lyra sat quietly, her hands folded, as if she was the one mending the world around her without even trying. Ethan watched her, half in awe, half in fear. She was powerful, far beyond what he could understand. But power came with danger. If others knew what she could do, she would not be a child to them. She would be a weapon as the hours dragged on. Lyra leaned against him, her eyes growing heavy. Ethan looked down, seeing her fall asleep like any other child. Trusting him completely, he whispered, "You should have been safe with your own people." But deep down, he knew whoever left her drifting in that escape pod had not wanted her safe. They wanted her gone, hidden or dead. The radar beeped again, sharper now. The hunter ship had locked on, preparing to strike. Ethan's chest tightened. He had no army, no fleet, only a rusting freighter and a sleeping girl. But he knew one thing: he could not give her up. He tightened his grip on the controls, sweat running down his neck. "Hold on, Lyra," he whispered, even though she was asleep. The ship shook as blaster fire lit up the darkness. Rocks exploded around them, fragments slicing past like knives. Ethan pushed the engines to their limit. Weaving between asteroids, metal groaned, alarms screamed, but he refused to stop through the chaos. He felt a small hand grab his arm. He glanced down. Lyra was awake, eyes glowing with strange light. She whispered a word he didn't know, her voice trembling, and then the pursuing ship's weapons flickered. Its engine stuttered. For a single heartbeat it slowed. As if something unseen had reached inside and broken it, Ethan seized the moment, steering the freighter into a narrow passage between two giant rocks. The hunter ship tried to follow, but the gap was too tight. With a flash of fire and metal it collided, breaking apart in silence. Pieces of its hull drifted away, swallowed by the endless dark. Ethan's freighter shuddered, but it was alive. He leaned back in his chair, breathing hard beside him. Lyra slumped, drained, her glow fading. He caught her before she fell. Holding her close, she was trembling, weak, and for the first time he realized the truth. Her power was not endless. Every time she used it, it cost her something, maybe even her life. Ethan held her tighter, whispering to himself, "This is only the beginning outside." The stars stretched on forever, but now, Ethan knew they were not alone in the void. Hunters would keep coming. The galaxy would not rest until they claimed her, and he, a single human, had chosen to stand against them all. The asteroid field faded behind them, but Ethan knew it was only a small victory. One hunter ship destroyed meant nothing. In this galaxy, news traveled faster than light. If one bounty hunter had found them, then others would follow. He could almost feel the eyes of unseen predators waiting in the dark, Lyra lay asleep in his quarters, pale and drained, her silver lines dim. Ethan checked on her every few minutes, each time he saw her small chest rise and fall. He felt both relief and fear, relief that she was still alive, and fear of what would happen if she used her strange powers again. It was saving them, but it was also killing her. Slowly he sat in the cockpit staring at the holographic screen, and then he saw it, his own face. Floating in a grainy projection, the bounty had been set. Wanted, the message read in dozens of galactic languages. A reward larger than anything Ethan had ever seen. Enough money to buy fleets, planets, even entire governments. His hands tightened on the console. They weren't just after Lyra anymore. They were after him. A human scavenger worth more dead or alive than he ever thought possible. Ethan cursed under his breath, shutting the projection down. But it was too late. The galaxy already knew. Posters, screens, markets, spaceports everywhere. His face would be there, and worse, every outlaw, mercenary, and soldier would be chasing them for the prize hours later. Ethan landed his freighter on a remote mining colony hidden in the belt of a dying star. He needed supplies, fuel, food, maybe parts to keep his failing ship alive. He told Lyra to stay hidden, tucking her in the narrow storage compartment behind his bunk. Her eyes filled with worry, but she nodded, whispering the word she had given him before. Protector. Ethan gave her a small smile, though his chest ached. I'll be back, I promise. The colony was a grim place. Dust filled the air, miners shuffled through the streets, their faces tired and gray. Neon lights flickered weakly above market stalls. Ethan kept his hood low, moving fast, avoiding every scanner, but whispers still followed him. He could feel the stares, the recognition. The bounty had reached here too. He stopped at a vendor to buy ration packs. The old miner behind the stall looked at him carefully, then leaned closer. You're the human, aren't you? The man whispered. Ethan froze. The miner's voice shook. They're saying you found something worth more than worlds. Ethan forced a rough smile, pretending not to understand. But his hand drifted toward his blaster, just in case it didn't matter. By the time he left the stall, shadows had begun to gather. Rough-looking men with weapons followed him, their eyes hungry bounty hunters. The trap was closing. Ethan ducked into an alley, heart pounding. But the hunters were faster, blocking both ends. One of them, a tall alien with sharp teeth, stepped forward, grinning. Give us the girl, human, he growled, and maybe we'll let you walk away. Ethan's blood ran cold. So they already knew, not just about him but about her. He drew his blaster, hand steady though his chest raced. There's no deal, he said, his voice low. The hunters laughed, weapons raising. You're outnumbered, scavenger. You can't protect her forever. The words hit Ethan harder than the threat itself. He wanted to protect her, but deep down he knew they were right. He was one man against the galaxy. How long could he keep her safe? Before he could answer, a commotion broke out in the street. Miners shouted, alarms blared, and in the distance engines roared. More ships had arrived. Ethan used the distraction, firing first. The alley lit up with red beams, sparks flying as metal walls burned. He rolled behind cover, returning fire, dropping one of the hunters, but more kept coming, their footsteps echoing closer. In that moment, Ethan realized the truth. There was no hiding anymore. No quiet colony, no safe corner of the galaxy. Everywhere he went, hunters would follow. And every time Lyra revealed her power, more would learn what she was. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a war, one that had already begun. Ethan fought his way out of the alley, smoke and fire trailing behind him. He sprinted through the market, blaster bolts tearing past. People scattered, shouting as chaos spread. Reaching the landing bay, he saw his freighter waiting, battered but ready, and there, peeking from the hatch, was Lyra, her eyes wide, silver lines glowing faintly again. No, Ethan shouted, waving for her to stay hidden, but it was too late. The hunters saw her, their voices filled the air. There! The girl, she's the prize. Ethan's chest turned to fire. He rushed forward, grabbing Lyra in his arms. Blaster fire rained around them as he pulled her inside. The engines roared, lifting the freighter just as the landing bay filled with armed mercenaries. Shots slammed into the hull, sparks flying, but the ship rose higher. Ethan shouted into the comm, "Hold together, just hold together!" The freighter blasted out of the colony, leaving the chaos behind. Inside, Lyra clung to him. Trembling, her eyes were full of fear, but also something stronger. Trust. Ethan held her close, his voice low but steady. They'll never stop, Lyra, he whispered. But neither will I. Outside, the galaxy spread wide and endless, and in its shadows hunters were already waiting. Watching, planning, closing in for the first time in years. Ethan felt the weight of destiny pressing against him. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was the protector of something greater than he could understand. And the price of that choice was already being written in blood. The freighter rattled as it left the mining colony behind. Blaster scars burned across its hull. Alarms screamed inside the cockpit. Ethan gripped the controls tightly, sweat running down his back. Beside him, Lyra sat strapped in, her small hands gripping the seat, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Stay with me, Ethan muttered, forcing the ship through open space. But already on the scanner, more red dots appeared. Not one ship, not two, but many. The hunters had spread the word. The galaxy had smelled blood. Lyra turned her gaze to him, whispering. They come. Her voice was soft, almost broken, but it carried the weight of truth. Ethan cursed under his breath. They couldn't outrun them forever. He needed somewhere to hide, somewhere no sane hunter would follow. His eyes shifted to the star map. There it was, an old forbidden zone, a place spoken of only in whispers, the Vera Nebula. Pilots called it the graveyard of ghosts. Ships that entered rarely came out. It was said the nebula swallowed fleets, leaving behind only wrecks and silence. But Ethan had no choice. Hold on, Lyra, he said, turning the freighter toward the swirling storm of purple and blue gas. The engines roared. The stars ahead began to blur. Behind them, the hunter ships gave chase. Firing again, bolts of red light cut across the void, one striking near the wing, shaking the freighter violently. Panels sparked, alarms blared louder. But Ethan pushed harder. The nebula loomed before them, twisting like a living cloud, glowing with strange lightning. Entering it felt like flying into the mouth of a beast. Protector, Lyra whispered. Her small voice trembling. Ethan glanced at her, forcing a smile he didn't feel. Yeah, I'll protect you, no matter what. The freighter pierced the edge of the nebula. Dark mist wrapped around them, swallowing the stars. Inside, light bent strangely. Colors shimmered where they shouldn't. Static filled the controls. The scanners went blind. It was like flying through a dream or a nightmare. The hunters followed, though more cautiously. Ethan could see faint shadows of their ships behind him, weaving through the mist. He guided his freighter deeper, trying to lose them. But the nebula was alive with danger. Wrecks floated everywhere. Giant warships torn apart, their bones drifting silently. Some were so old their metal had rusted into strange colors. Others looked almost new, as if swallowed only days ago. Lyra pressed her face to the window, eyes wide in awe and fear. Many. Dead, she whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. This is why no one comes here, he said, but he kept flying, weaving between the broken giants of the past. A sudden flash lit the nebula. Lightning burst across the clouds, striking one of the hunter ships. It spun out of control, crashing into a drifting wreck. Exploding into a fireball, Lyra flinched, clutching Ethan's arm. He held her close, whispering, Not us. Not us, but the others pressed on. The hunters were desperate, the bounty too great. Their ships closed in, weapons glowing. Ethan pulled hard on the controls, dodging through narrow passages between old wrecks. The freighter scraped metal, sparks flying as they squeezed through. Blaster fire lit up the fog, shaking the ship with every near miss. Suddenly, the console went black. Ethan slammed his fist on it. No, not now! The nebula's strange energy was draining the ship's systems. Lights flickered, engines stuttered for a moment. Ethan thought it was over. Then he felt it, a soft glow beside him. Lyra's silver lines brightened, her small hands touching the console. The dead lights flickered back to life. The engines roared again, but he saw her face twist in pain, her body trembling as if the energy was flowing out of her. Stop, Lyra, he begged, pulling her hand away. You'll kill yourself. She looked at him weakly, whispering one word. Safe. Then she collapsed into his arms, her glow fading. Ethan held her close with one arm while steering with the other. His jaw tightened, his heart heavy. Every time she saved them, she suffered, and yet she did it willingly. Because she trusted him, because she believed in him. The hunter ships were still closing in, but Ethan wasn't done yet. Ahead, a massive wreck drifted, a colossal warship, split in half, its jagged edges forming a narrow passage. It was risky, almost suicide, but it was their only chance. Hold on, he whispered, gripping the controls. The freighter shot forward. Racing toward the broken giant, hunters followed. Desperate not to lose their prize, the freighter squeezed through the narrow gap. Metal groaning as sparks flew, Ethan held his breath. Praying the ship would fit, they burst through, engines screaming behind them. One hunter clipped the jagged edge, tearing apart. Another collided with the wreckage. Exploding in fire, the survivors pulled back. Unwilling to follow further, Ethan's freighter stumbled out into a quieter pocket of the nebula. Here the mist was calmer, the wrecks fewer. He finally let out a shaky breath, slumping in his chair. Lyra lay weak in his arms, her breath shallow but steady. He brushed her silver hair back, whispering, "You did it, little one." We made it, but deep inside he knew the truth. This escape was only temporary. The hunters would regroup. More would come, the bounty was too great. And every time Lyra used her power, she paid a price her small body might not survive. Ethan looked out at the endless clouds of the nebula. He had found a moment of safety, but it would not last. The storm was only beginning, and somewhere beyond the mist, greater forces were already moving, watching, waiting, closing in. The Vera Nebula was quiet for a moment, as if holding its breath. Ethan's freighter drifted through the strange mist. Its engines tired, its hull scarred. Inside, the lights flickered weakly, but it was enough. Lyra lay resting on the bunk, her glow dim but steady. Ethan sat beside her, watching her small chest rise and fall. She looked so fragile, so human in her sleep, and yet she was the reason entire fleets wanted him dead. He brushed a hand through his messy hair, his mind heavy. "What am I doing?" he whispered. He had survived by staying small, by never drawing attention. Now, the entire galaxy knew his face, all because of this one child. A sudden alarm shook the ship. Ethan rushed to the cockpit, his heart sinking. There, cutting through the nebula mist, appeared a massive warship. Its black hull stretched for miles, bristling with cannons and glowing engines. The freighter was a bug compared to it. Fragile and helpless, Ethan's stomach twisted. The warship hailed him, its cold voice filling the cabin. "Human vessel, you are surrounded. Resistance will mean death." Ethan glanced at the scanner. Dozens of smaller ships formed a net around him. There was no escape this time. The voice continued, "Surrender the girl, and your life will be spared. Refuse, and you will be destroyed." Ethan's throat went dry. His hand hovered over the comm. He wanted to shout, to curse, but instead he just stood there frozen. The words rang in his ears. Hand her over and live. For a moment, the choice seemed simple. He had no army, no weapons strong enough to face them. What could one man do against a warship? Handing Lyra over might be the only way to survive. He looked back toward the bunk. She was awake now, sitting up weakly, her glowing eyes watching him. Her lips trembled, but her voice was clear. "If they take me, many die." Her words were broken, but the meaning was sharp. She knew more than she had told him. She wasn't just hunted, she was feared. Ethan's chest tightened. She was only a child, and yet she carried the burden of a galaxy. He walked over, kneeling beside her. "Lyra, if I give you to them, I live. If I don't, we both die." The words burned in his throat. He hated himself for saying them. Lyra reached out. Placing her small glowing hand on his chest, her eyes shone with tears. "You protector," she whispered. The word hit him like a blade. Protector, not betrayer. Not coward. Protector. Ethan closed his eyes. The decision heavy but clear. He stood, turned back to the comm, and spoke. "No deal," his voice steady now. "You want her? You'll have to kill me first." For a moment, silence. Then the warship's captain laughed, cold and cruel. "So be it, human, die with your mistake." The cannons of the warship began to glow, charging with deadly energy. The scanner blared warnings. Impact was seconds away. Ethan gripped the controls, his knuckles white. There was no winning this fight, but there was still one choice he could make. He looked at Lyra, who stared at him with trust and fear. He forced a smile, though his heart ached. "I promised I'd protect you, little one, even if it costs me everything." He raced to the engineering panel. His hands flying over the switches, the freighter groaned as he overloaded its core. The ship itself would become a bomb, strong enough to cripple even a warship. It was suicide, but it was the only way. Lyra's eyes widened as she realized. "No," she cried, her voice shaking. But Ethan lifted her into his arms, carrying her to the escape pod. She fought weakly, glowing tears running down her cheeks. "No leave. No, leave, she begged. Ethan's own eyes burned. But he kept moving. He set her inside the small pod, sealing her gently with trembling hands. Listen to me, he said, his voice breaking. You'll live, Lyra. You'll survive. They won't have you. She pounded her tiny fists against the glass, crying, Protect her! No, stay! But the hatch sealed. Ethan placed his hand against the glass. His voice was low, heavy with sorrow. You called me protector, so that's what I'll be. This is the only way. The countdown began, the ship's core screaming louder. Outside, the warship charged its cannons. Unaware of the trap, Ethan returned to the cockpit. Sitting down one last time, his eyes drifted to the stars beyond the nebula mist. For once, he didn't feel like a scavenger. He felt like something greater, a human standing against an empire. The pod shot away, carrying Lyra into the darkness. Her face pressed against the glass. Her voice lost in silence. Ethan watched it vanish. A single spark of hope in the storm. The warship fired, its beams tearing through the freighter. At that same instant, Ethan triggered the overload. The freighter erupted in a blinding explosion. Light swallowed the nebula. Flames engulfed the hunters. The warship shuddered, torn apart by the blast, and in the silence that followed, only the escape pod drifted away, carrying a crying child who had lost her protector, but carrying his promise too. The explosion tore through the Vera Nebula. Light brighter than a star swallowed the wrecks, burning shadows into the mist. The shockwave rippled outward, scattering debris across the silent void. The massive warship groaned, its hull cracking as fire consumed it, and then it was gone, broken into drifting pieces. Far away, a small escape pod tumbled in the darkness. Inside, Lyra pressed her face to the glass, silver tears rolling down her cheeks. Her tiny hands beat against the window as the fireball faded in the distance. No, protect her, she cried, her voice shaking with grief. But the void gave no answer, only silence. She curled into a ball, hugging herself, trembling as the pod drifted. Her silver lines glowed faintly, pulsing with her heartbeat. For the first time since Ethan had found her, she was alone. Her chest ached in a way she did not understand. It was not just fear, it was loss, a pain deeper than wounds. The pod spun slowly, carrying her deeper into the nebula. She closed her eyes, whispering his word again and again. Protector. Protector. Her voice was soft, but her tears kept falling. She wanted him back. She wanted his arms around her. His voice telling her she was safe, but he was gone. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time blurred in the endless dark. Her pod systems flickered weakly, running on emergency power. Sometimes she dreamed she saw Ethan's face, smiling, calling her name. Other times she saw fire, hunters, shadows reaching for her each time she woke. Her small body shook with fear, but she was not forgotten. The explosion had not gone unnoticed. Ships on the edge of the nebula had seen the blast. Fleets heard the whispers. A human destroyed a warship. A human defied the bounty, and most shocking of all, the alien child lives. Rumors spread like fire. Some said the human was a fool. Others called him brave, but all agreed on one thing. The price of protecting the girl was death. Meanwhile, deep inside the nebula, scavenger ships began searching the wreckage of the warship. They wanted proof of the explosion, proof of the human's end, and most of all, they wanted the girl. The bounty still stood alive. She was worth more than kingdoms. Lyra's pod drifted closer to the edge of the nebula, its beacon weak but still alive soon. Scavenger sensors caught the signal. A crew of raiders locked onto it, smiling with greed. She's alive, one hissed. Grab her, and we'll be rich beyond dreams. The raiders approached, their ship casting a shadow over the tiny pod. Inside, Lyra stirred awake, her eyes wide with fear. She saw the looming shape outside, felt the hunger in their hearts. Her small hands trembled. No, she whispered. Not them. The pod shuddered as mechanical claws reached out, pulling it toward the raider ship. Her chest burned with panic, her silver lines glowing brighter. She remembered Ethan's words, I'll protect you, no matter what. But he was gone. Now she had to protect herself. The glow spread across her body, filling the pod with light. The raiders laughed at first, but then their consoles sparked. Their systems failed. Engines roared out of control, alarms screamed. The claws holding the pod twisted and melted. The raider ship shook violently, torn apart from within by unseen force. In the middle of the storm, Lyra screamed, not in anger but in sorrow. Her voice echoed through the void like a song of grief. The raider ship exploded, its wreckage scattering into the nebula. And then the light faded. Inside the pod, Lyra slumped weakly, her glow almost gone. She had saved herself, but it had drained her. She lay on the floor, trembling, whispering again, "Protector." The pod drifted on, silent once more, but the destruction she left behind carried a message. Hunters who scanned the nebula felt fear. This was no ordinary child. She was something greater, something dangerous. And if a single human had been willing to die for her, perhaps she was worth more than any bounty. Far away, councils and empires debated. Why did the human protect her? What is she to them? Is humanity a threat we underestimated? The galaxy, vast and cold, had begun to notice one small human act of defiance, and it frightened them. Back in the pod, Lyra lay weak, her eyes closing. She saw Ethan again in her dreams. He was there, smiling, his rough voice soft. "You're not alone, Lyra. You'll live." She reached for him, but he faded into the mist. Her tears glowed as she whispered one last time before sleep claimed her, "Protector." And as the pod drifted toward unknown stars, the galaxy whispered a new name into the void. The human who gave his life for an alien child. The human who dared to pay the galactic price. The escape pod drifted for days, maybe weeks, carried by the slow currents of the void. Inside, Lyra slept most of the time, weak from her power, her silver lines faint and fading. But each time she woke, she whispered the same word into the silence. "Protector." She clung to it like a shield. A memory of the man who had given his life for her. In her small heart, she believed Ethan was still watching, somewhere beyond the stars, but she was alone now. And the galaxy was closing in at the edge of the nebula. A patrol ship from the free worlds picked up the faint signal of her pod. When they pulled her aboard, the crew froze, a child, glowing faintly, alien yet fragile. Her eyes opened, wide and bright. She whispered a single word to them in broken English. "Protector," and then she collapsed. The crew rushed her to safety, but the news spread before she even recovered. The girl had survived, the human was dead, and the bounty was still alive. Across the galaxy, worlds buzzed with the story. Taverns filled with whispers, marketplaces buzzed with rumors. A human destroyed a warship. A human defied the empires. A human gave his life for the alien girl. Some laughed at the foolishness. Others spoke of bravery, but everyone remembered the name of the species, human. On distant planets, councils gathered, the Council of Crowns argued in their marble chambers. "The child must be recovered," one ruler hissed. "She is too dangerous to be free." But another voice rose, fearful. "And what of the human? If one of them can do this, what happens if more follow?" The syndicate lords debated in the shadows. "She is profit," one growled. "She is power," another agreed. But even their greedy voices shook when they spoke of the human. He had no army, no fleet, no weapons of empire, yet he had destroyed what none dared to face. With courage, with sacrifice, the story grew into legend. Some said Ethan had survived the explosion. Some said his spirit now guarded the girl, and some whispered that humanity itself was rising. If one man could stand against the galaxy, then what would happen when more humans came? Meanwhile, Lyra recovered slowly aboard the Free World ship. She wandered the halls, quiet and watchful. The crew treated her with care, but they did not understand her. She spoke little, her words broken. But sometimes at night, she would sit by the window, staring at the stars. Her small hands pressed to the glass, and she whispered to the void, "Protector will return." Her presence changed the crew. They began to argue in hushed tones. "She's only a child," one said. "But she destroyed an entire ship," another answered. "She carries sorrow," a third whispered. "She carries hope." When they looked at her, they didn't just see a prize, they saw a story of a human who had chosen death rather than betrayal. A story that no empire could erase. Across the galaxy, hunters still searched. Their greed was too strong to ignore the bounty, but they began to hesitate. The ones who entered the nebula spoke of ghostly light, of whispers in the mist. They claimed they saw the human's face, staring back at them, Protector. A name that became a curse to some, a blessing to others, and so, the galaxy began to change for the first time. They spoke of humanity with fear, not because of numbers, not because of weapons, but because of one man's choice. Because of sacrifice. Lyra knew this, though she was still a child. She felt the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. She felt the pull of those who wanted her power. But in her heart she carried Ethan's promise. "You'll live, Lyra." And she believed him. She began to dream of the future. A time when she could stand tall, not as a prize but as herself. A time when she could tell the galaxy that humans were not to be feared or hunted, but respected because they were protectors. One night, as the ship carried her toward a safer world, she sat by the window again, her eyes glowing faintly. Her silver lines pulsing with life, she whispered into the stars, "I will keep your promise, protector. I will live." And somewhere far beyond, the galaxy shivered. Because one small alien girl had survived. Because one human had paid the price. And because his choice had lit a spark no empire could ever put out. The galaxy had not seen the last of humanity. It had only seen the beginning.